The old wooden walls of Hope Church creaked under the June wind. Lisa Jones, a young detective with bright brown eyes, walked down the basement stairs of the church in the small town of Pine Valley. Her job today seemed simple, just checking old church papers for the town's history project. The basement smelled like her grandmother's old books. Dust floated in the light from the small windows near the ceiling. Lisa picked up a worn-out box labeled Baby Blessings, 1985 to 1990. Inside, she found pages filled with names of babies who got blessed at the church, but something strange caught her eye. Some names had little red marks next to them. Curious, Lisa pulled out her phone and searched these names in the police records. Her heart started beating faster with each name she checked. Billy Smith, blessed on May 10, 1985, disappeared on his 7th birthday, May 15, 1992. Jenny Brown, blessed July 2, 1986, vanished on her 7th birthday, July 20, 1993. Every single child with a red mark had gone missing on their 7th birthday. Lisa's hands started shaking. Her little girl Amy, just 6 years old, had been blessed in this same church last year. She quickly found the newest records. There it was, Amy's blessing paper with the same red mark. Cold fear ran through her body. She heard footsteps upstairs and the old heating pipes made loud noises, but her mind was racing with worry about Amy. "Detective?" called a soft voice. It was Father Mike, the new church leader, coming down with coffee. But he'd only been here 3 years. The red marks went back 30 years. As his steps came closer, Lisa noticed something else. Tiny numbers hidden in the corner of each marked paper. They looked like dates. Future dates. With trembling fingers, she checked Amy's paper. In the corner was a date, March 15th, next year. Amy's 7th birthday. Through the dusty window, Lisa saw someone walking in the church garden. Old Mrs. Green, the church secretary who'd worked here for 40 years. Mrs. Green was planting red roses, just like the ones Lisa had seen in old pictures of missing children holding them on their 7th birthdays. Mrs. Green looked up, smiled at Lisa, and made a strange mark in the air, exactly like the red marks in the records. Lisa heard Father Mike's footsteps on the last few stairs. She had to hide what she'd found, but she also noticed something odd. Father Mike's shadow on the wall didn't match his shape. It looked more like wings. She had just 9 months to solve this mystery before Amy's birthday, and now she wasn't sure who she could trust in this small town where everyone knew everyone, or thought they did. Lisa quietly tucked the records into her bag when Father Mike reached the bottom of the stairs. His smile seemed friendly, but something about his eyes made her uneasy. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, holding out the coffee cup. The cup had a strange symbol on it, the same design she'd noticed carved faintly on the church's old wooden doors. Back at home that night, Lisa spread the papers across her kitchen table after Amy went to bed. The numbers in the corners weren't just random dates, they formed a pattern. Each date was exactly 7 years and 7 days after the child's blessing. But Amy's was different. Her date was only 7 years, not the extra 7 days. Lisa found old newspaper clippings about the missing children online. Each had disappeared without a trace. No signs of break-ins, no witnesses, nothing stolen except the child. The last thing anyone saw was each child walking toward Hope Church holding red roses. A knock at her door made her jump. It was past midnight. Through the peephole she saw Mrs. Green, still in her gardening clothes. "Detective Jones?" "I know what you found today," she called softly. Lisa's hand hovered over her gun, but when she opened the door, Mrs. Green was crying. "I've been keeping records," she whispered, pulling out an old diary. "It's not just Hope Church. Every church in 7 towns has the same marks. I've worked here 40 years trying to find proof." The diary showed hundreds of names, all children who disappeared. But something else caught Lisa's eye. One child survived, a boy named David White. He'd moved away 30 years ago, but his 7th birthday had fallen on a special date, a lunar eclipse. Lisa checked her phone. Another eclipse was coming, on Amy's birthday. As Lisa drove Mrs. Green home, they passed Hope Church. A light glowed in the basement, and shadows moved against the windows. But they weren't human shapes. Lisa slammed on the brakes. Through the church's stained glass windows, she saw Father Mike standing in a circle of candles. But in the colored light, his shadow showed massive wings, and he was writing in a book with red ink that looked suspiciously like blood. Mrs. Green's diary revealed more than just names. Each missing child had been photographed at their blessing ceremony, and in every photo's background stood a hooded figure, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Lisa stayed up all night studying the pictures. The figure's robe had symbols that matched the strange markings on Father Mike's coffee cup. The next morning, while dropping Amy at school, Lisa noticed red roses planted around the playground, the same kind Mrs. Green grew. The school's name stopped her cold. St. Michael's Elementary. On the school sign, a tiny red mark sat in the corner. Inside the office, Lisa found old class photos. Her hands trembled as she counted. Every year, 7 students disappeared. Lisa called David White, the only child who survived. His voice shook when he answered. "The eclipse saved me," he whispered. "They can't take children when the moon blocks the sun. But there's a price. Someone else must go instead." Lisa's heart stopped. In the background of David's 7th birthday photo, his parents stood smiling. In the next town's newspaper a week later, they were reported missing. That afternoon, Lisa found a red rose on her car. Under it lay a note in handwriting she recognized from the blessing records. "Some prices are worth paying for eternal life." But it wasn't Father Mike's writing. It matched Mrs. Green's diary perfectly. At home, Lisa found Amy drawing pictures. Her daughter's artwork showed winged figures surrounding a church, and in the corner, Amy had drawn 7 roses. When Lisa confronted Mrs. Green at the church garden, the old woman smiled strangely. "We all make choices, Detective," she said, pulling off her gardening gloves. Her hands weren't wrinkled like the rest of her. They looked young, almost childlike. Behind them, Father Mike emerged from the shadows, but his feet weren't touching the ground. "The question is," Mrs. Green continued, "what choice will you make when Amy's time comes?" Lisa spent the night researching old town records. 7 churches in 7 towns formed a perfect circle on the map. At the center was an abandoned building, the original Hope Church from 1777. News articles showed it burned down exactly 77 years ago, with 7 children inside. Their bodies were never found. A video call with David White revealed more. "They need 7 children from each church every 7 years, he explained, his face pale. "The original 7 children didn't die in that fire. They became something else. They need new children to keep their power." His screen flickered, showing a winged shadow behind him. The call cut off abruptly. At school, Amy's teacher pulled Lisa aside. "Amy drew this today." The picture showed 7 children holding hands around a burning church. One child had Amy's yellow dress. More disturbing, the art teacher was new, replacing the previous one who'd vanished last week. Her name tag read Ms. White, David's sister, who supposedly disappeared 30 years ago, hadn't aged a day. In Mrs. Green's garden, Lisa dug beneath the roses. She found small shoes buried under each bush. They matched the descriptions of missing children's clothes. Deeper down, she discovered a tunnel leading toward the old church ruins. Inside her pocket, her phone showed a message from an unknown number. Every 7 years, we need new gardeners. The roses must be fed. That night, Amy sleepwalked to her window, whispering strange words. Outside, 7 figures with wings circled the house, each carrying a red rose. Mrs. Green stood below, her face now young in the moonlight. "Your daughter is special, Lisa," she called up. "She'll be the 7th child of the 7th year, unless ... She held up an ancient book. "You could take her place. After all, a mother's love is the strongest magic of all." Lisa found herself questioning everything she knew about Pine Valley. The past week's discoveries had turned her world upside down. While Amy slept peacefully upstairs, Lisa studied Mrs. Green's offer in the ancient book she'd left behind. The pages revealed a dark truth. Each group of 7 children wasn't just taken, they were transformed into guardians of an ancient power. In the book's worn pages, Lisa found a family tree. Every church leader since 1777 was connected to one of the original 7 children from the fire. Father Mike's real name was Michael Green, Mrs. Green's son, who supposedly died in 1943. They weren't just taking children, they were building an immortal family. Late that night, Amy drew another picture, this time of 7 doors beneath the old church ruins. "The nice lady in the garden told me about them," Amy said sleepily. "She says I'll get to pick one soon." Lisa's blood ran cold. Each door in Amy's drawing had a name. The original 7 children who died in the fire. Investigating the ruins, Lisa discovered the doors were real. Behind each, she heard children's laughter. But when she checked her phone's camera screen, the images showed ancient winged creatures wearing children's clothes. A text message appeared. "Every guardian needs a keeper. Every keeper needs a child. Or a replacement." Mrs. Green appeared, looking younger than ever. "I chose to replace my son in 1943, she explained. "Father Mike chose to keep his child's form instead. Now it's your choice. Become a keeper like me, or let Amy become a guardian like him." As she spoke, 7 children with glowing eyes emerged from the doors. Each held a rose, and they began to sing a lullaby Lisa recognized, the same one Amy had been humming all week. The next morning, Lisa visited each of the 7 churches, looking for connections. In each one, she found hidden rooms with the same symbol, a rose wrapped around a child's hand. At Hope Church, Lisa discovered Father Mike's real diary. Each page held locks of children's hair, glowing with strange light. Back at the ruins, Lisa accidentally cut herself on a rose thorn. Her blood dripped onto the ground and the earth shook. The doors creaked open by themselves. Inside each one, she saw different versions of Amy, one for each path she could choose. In the first door, Amy was a guardian with glowing wings. In another, she saw herself as a young keeper, leading new children to the doors. The other doors showed darker fates. David White appeared suddenly, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood the missing school art teacher, his sister Sarah. "We found another way," David said. "During the eclipse, their power weakens. One child saved can break the chain for that church. 7 children saved can end it forever." Sarah nodded. "But someone has to take their place temporarily, just until the eclipse ends." Lisa looked at her phone. 6 days until the eclipse. In Amy's latest drawing at school, she'd sketched 7 roses wilting under a dark sun. Mrs. Green's garden was dying too, the roses turning black one by one. Father Mike's shadow now moved independently of him, reaching for passing children with clawed hands. Time was running out. Lisa had to choose, save Amy and risk breaking an ancient chain, or let her daughter become part of this twisted eternal family. As she stood thinking, Amy walked into the ruins, holding 7 black roses. "Mommy," she said in a voice that wasn't quite her own. They say it's time to choose a door. David and Sarah White revealed their plan. During the eclipse, all 7 doors had to be opened at once. A parent's willing sacrifice could free their child, but they needed 7 parents to break the entire chain. They'd spent years finding marked children and convincing their parents, waiting for this specific eclipse that would align with all 7 churches. Lisa found 6 other desperate parents, each with a marked child. But Mrs. Green discovered their plan. The roses in her garden turned blood red, and the ground split open. Father Mike's true form emerged, a massive winged creature wearing a child's face. "Your mother's sacrifice was noble," he told Lisa, "but Amy has a greater destiny." As the eclipse approached, Amy's drawings changed. She sketched herself with wings, but also drew Lisa with a rose garden, Mrs. Green crumbling to dust, and 7 doors shattering. She knew something they didn't. "Mommy," Amy whispered, "Grandma found another way. We don't need 7 sacrifices. We just need one person with the blood of both sides." Lisa touched the mirror showing her mother. The glass rippled under her fingers, revealing a hidden truth that would change everything. Lisa's finger on the mirror revealed a startling secret. Her own blood carried both guardian and keeper essence from her mother's sacrifice. In her childhood photos, her shadow sometimes showed tiny wings. The marks on the baptism records weren't choosing new children. They were tracking bloodlines of those who could bridge both worlds. Amy's latest drawings scattered across the ruins floor, blown by an unnatural wind. Each showed pieces of a ritual: 7 roses, 7 doors, and 1 person with mixed blood. Mrs. Green appeared, her young face twisted with fear. "If you figured it out, then you know we can't let you leave." Behind her, Father Mike's wings spread wide, blocking the exit. But Sarah White stepped forward, holding a worn diary, Lisa's mother's. "Your mother didn't just sacrifice herself," Sarah explained. "She left instructions. During an eclipse, someone with both bloodlines can enter all 7 doors at once. Their divided nature can seal the doorways forever." The diary pages glowed with the same light as Lisa's blood. Father Mike lunged forward, but Amy stood between him and Lisa. Where Amy's feet touched the ground, black roses grew instantly, their thorns creating a barrier. Mrs. Green tried to break through but collapsed, aging rapidly as her keeper powers weakened under Amy's presence. The other marked children appeared, forming a circle around Lisa. "You're not just one person," Amy said in a voice mixing her own with an ancient wisdom. "You're 7 possibilities in one body. That's what Grandma discovered." The eclipse began, darkening the ruins. Lisa saw her reflections in all 7 mirrors move independently, each walking toward a different door. She understood she wouldn't have to choose one door. She could choose them all. As the moon covered the sun, Lisa's blood held the power to end a cycle that had lasted centuries, but using it would come with a price she never expected. The final part of the story unfolded as the eclipse reached its peak. The 7 doors glowed with ancient power. Lisa's reflection stepped through each doorway simultaneously as Amy's voice echoed, "A daughter's love can break what a mother's sacrifice began." Inside the doors, Lisa experienced 7 different fates at once. She saw herself as a guardian, a keeper, a protector, and a destroyer. Each version faced a piece of the ancient power. Her mixed blood began to glow, creating bridges between the doorways. Mrs. Green screamed as her eternal youth faded. Father Mike's wings turned to dust. But the price revealed itself. To seal the doors forever, Lisa would have to merge all 7 versions of herself. Amy watched as her mother's form flickered between realities. "Sometimes endings are also beginnings," Amy whispered, her own inherited power growing stronger. The original 7 children appeared, now free from their eternal imprisonment. They joined hands with the marked children, forming a circle of healing. Lisa's mother's spirit emerged from the mirrors, helping guide the fragments of Lisa back together. As the eclipse ended, the doors crumbled. Mrs. Green aged into dust, finding peace at last. Father Mike transformed back into a normal man, his centuries of guardianship finally over. The roses in the garden bloomed white instead of red. Lisa emerged changed, not quite human, not quite guardian, but something new. Amy hugged her mother, both of them now carrying the power to protect rather than imprison. The other marked children were freed. Their 7th birthdays now just ordinary days to celebrate. The old church ruins transformed into a sanctuary for those caught between worlds. Lisa and Amy became its protectors, helping others with mixed blood understand their gifts. The 7 towns slowly healed, their dark secrets replaced with hope. And in Mrs. Green's garden, white roses bloomed eternally, marking not the lost, but the found. In the end, it wasn't sacrifice that broke the cycle. It was the power of choosing to become something entirely new. The baptism records now served as a reminder. Sometimes the most powerful magic comes from being caught between 2 worlds. In the aftermath of Lisa's transformation, Pine Valley faced new challenges. Strange lights appeared above each of the 7 churches. Children with mixed blood, like Amy, started showing unique abilities. Some could see through the old mirrors. Others could grow white roses that healed instead of harmed. The original church ruins became a school where Lisa taught young mixed bloods to control their powers. Amy, growing stronger each day, helped other children understand their gifts. But not everyone welcomed the change. Old keeper families who had lost their immortality started disappearing, taking ancient books and artifacts with them. One morning, Lisa found black rose petals scattered outside the school. Inside, the mirrors showed disturbing visions, new doors forming in distant cities, keepers attempting to restart the cycle. More concerning, some parents of mixed-blood children had begun offering their kids power to regain immortality. David and Sarah White discovered something in their family records. The original ritual in 1777 hadn't been meant to create guardians and keepers. It was supposed to unite human and guardian blood naturally over generations, creating protectors like Lisa and Amy. The ancient power had been corrupted by those seeking eternal life. As Lisa and Amy worked to protect the new generation, they realized their transformation hadn't just ended an old cycle, it had started a new one. But this time, instead of imprisonment and sacrifice, it was built on choice and protection. The 7 doors had become 7 paths that each child could explore safely before choosing their own way. The final test came when another eclipse approached. Would the changes they'd made hold, or would the old powers try to reclaim their dominion? Lisa and Amy stood in the white rose garden, watching the sky darken, knowing their real journey was just beginning. The final lights from the previous eclipse faded, but it wasn't over. A year after the transformation, on Amy's 8th birthday, the ground beneath all 7 churches trembled. The missing keeper families had found something in the ancient texts, a way to reverse Lisa's changes by gathering the remaining mixed-blood children during a rare double eclipse. Former Father Mike, now mortal, warned Lisa about a hidden 8th door, created as a failsafe by the original 7 children. Deep under the school, they found it, a black door covered in both red and white roses. Through the mirrors, they saw armies of former keepers gathering in cities worldwide, building new doors, marking new children. Amy's latest drawing showed all the mixed-blood children forming a circle around the black door. Lisa understood. They needed everyone's power, not just hers, to seal this final gateway. The double eclipse began, and the black door pulsed with dark energy. Former keepers swarmed the school, desperate to reclaim their immortality. But this time was different. The mixed-blood children joined hands, their combined power creating a shield of white light. Lisa and Amy stood at the center, their transformed blood glowing brighter than ever. The black door absorbed their united power, not to imprison or destroy, but to transform itself into a fountain of natural magic. The former keepers who fought against them turned to ordinary humans, their corrupt power cleansed. Those who accepted the change kept a small gift, the ability to guide and teach, but never to control. The original 7 children appeared one last time, now at peace, thanking Lisa and Amy for completing what they had started centuries ago. The school expanded, becoming a sanctuary for all magical children. The white roses spread worldwide, marking not places of loss, but spots where magic flowed naturally. Lisa and Amy's story became legend, taught to every new generation. Power gained through love and choice will always overcome power taken through force and fear. In the garden, where Mrs. Green's red roses once grew, a new flower bloomed, a perfect blend of white and pink, celebrating the balance between human and guardian, past and future, ending and beginning. The 7 churches stood renewed, no longer prisons for stolen children, but bridges between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And in Pine Valley, where it all began, parents no longer feared their children's 7th birthdays. Instead, they celebrated them, knowing each child would find their own path, their own power, and their own way to protect the delicate balance between all worlds.